Oh, whoa, howdy. We're doing another tier list for Warframe of all the frames in the game as of Jade Shadows. This one's gonna be more, what's the word? I don't know, realistic than the last one. I wanted to wait, but I also wanted to do one. I don't know. I still have to put some frames in the I don't know, because I still don't have them and I don't have the resources right now to get them and then build them. So I deeply, sincerely apologize to those that wanted to see these frames. It is 4, I believe, which would be Dagoth, Sevagoth. I don't even want to build Sevagoth until the Prime comes out since they just announced him. I should get Dagoth hopefully soon. Lavos. And where's the last one? It is Baruch, but I can't find him because I'm really blind and bad at seeing stuff. Baruch, here he is. Baruch. And I believe that is all the frames that I don't know about. Oh, wait, no. And Garuda. 5, yes. Very, very, very sorry to the people that wanted to see these listings. If I had to just randomly guess, I'd say Garuda's probably A. Same for Baruch. Lavos is likely S. Sevagoth is probably... I don't know. I guess Sevagoth and Dagoth both just got really good new augments in Jade Shadows, so maybe they're both B or A? I don't know. Anyways, let's get on to the frames that I do know about. But first, we need to cover what the different tiers mean, right? Which is very important. So F tier is frames that need a complete rework, okay? These frames need a rework on the level that Caliban is getting, that Inaros and Hydroid got as well. If they're an F tier, then I believe they need that desperate rework. C tier means they're pretty bad, but you can make them work. The B tier means they're okay, but they could use a little help. A tier means they're strong, but balanced. S tier means they are very strong, and they can pretty much clear most of the content in the game. SS tier means they are so strong that they may need to be nerfed. I know a lot of people don't like the words nerf, especially those people that are like, it's a PvE game, why would you ever nerf something? And sorry to anybody that believes that, but if you say that, you're an idiot. That doesn't mean you have to always be an idiot. I've said stuff in the past that made me an idiot, okay? You don't have to continue to be one, but to say that it's a PvE game so you don't need to nerf stuff is just so stupid. Just such a small brain thing that you can say. It shows you clearly know nothing about game balancing and how important it is to keeping a game, like, not unfun. So let's get to all of these frames. First, I want to immediately put to, I guess we'll go one by one. That way I can try to timestamp all of it, right? First, we have Jade. Jade is the new frame, and she's actually pretty strong. I would put her in S tier. She's really, really strong. There are some people that say she's terrible, but they clearly don't know how to build a frame. I mean, she just brings so much to the table. She's got her biggest issue is survivability, but she doesn't have the worst survivability. Tons of buffs for herself and for the team. A stupidly overpowered exalted weapon that goes through walls. Judgment, which is a humongous damage debuff onto the enemy, so they take chonk damage. She's just very strong. And then her helmet ability is incredible. Not just on her, but like to put on other frames in general. It's just such a good ability. Here, we might need to turn my mic down so it doesn't pick up all the mouse sound. Okay, so next is Limbo. Big Poppy Limbo. I put Limbo in A tier. He has the potential to be in S tier, but his biggest problem is usually nullifiers. If there are no nullifiers involved, though, he is the king of defense frames. Put silence on him to deal with Eximus because they don't get stunned due to their overguard, and you're done. There you go. Silence Limbo, you just beat the game. If you're doing a defense level cap, like, say, the Duvuri Steel Pass Circuit, Limbo, you just won. It's over. They might as well just give you the loot right now. He's just that strong. His biggest issues, though, are that you really need silence as his helmet ability to fix his big problem of Eximus. and nullifiers completely negate his existence. If there's a nullifier that walks into your big Cataclysm Dome, you're pretty much screwed. Other than that, though, he's pretty good. Nezha. Nezha definitely goes into the S tier because he has really good survivability. Well, actually, I don't want to overcrowd S tier like I did in the last video. There were a lot of people that were mad about that, which, in my defense, was the goal, was to make people mad because I thought it would be funny. And, well, I mean, it accomplished that, but this video I want to be more realistic, right? So I can't put every frame in S tier. S tier is supposed to be, like, really strong, but Nezha is really strong. We will sort the tier list out more once I fill it in, then we'll, like, order them in each tier. Nezha's got great survivability, he's got great movement, he's got great damage, spreading statuses and stuff everywhere, specifically because of his augment from Dante Unbound. It's a really, really tough one. I'm gonna say S tier, okay? Just because he's got most of the stuff you could need. Harrow goes in... I'm gonna have to be honest. I put him higher last time, but I think B tier is comfortable for him. B tier's not bad. He just has a little bit too much clunkiness, and he relies a lot on casting speed. He's a super strong frame. Incredible frame. And he has no energy problems because he can just give himself infinite energy pretty much. But he does have some issues, like you really want armor strip. Pillage fits in his build nicely though. But the fact that you have to always work around his 4 can be a bit annoying, especially in an objective-based game mode where you're moving around a lot, like with Demolists in Disruption or with Void Cascade and stuff. It can just become a bit of a pain. Next we have Frost. Frost is A tier. He could be debated to be put into S tier, but he takes a lot of investment to fix his energy issues with spamming his 4. He does have good survivability with the Overguard augment, but it's not as good as some other frames. He does have that full armor strip, which is nice, but he also, other than having big energy problems, he also has a huge need for casting speed shards. And to be fair, a lot of frames do really need casting speed shards, but he really needs the casting speed shards. And making builds for him, he's very slot starved for mod slots, and trying to fit everything on him can be a pain. He's not bad though, he's actually really, really good. If he just had a little bit more here or there, he could go up to S tier, but for now, I would put him in A tier. Titania. Titania is B tier, but if you're speedrunning, S tier, right? But generally speaking, I think Titania's in B tier because she's really good and she got better now that Blast exists so that she can, like, have some level of AoE, but her controls are still Arcwind controls, which are really, really funky. Her Lantern effect isn't that great. Her weird little buffs are borderline useless. Her first ability, especially with the augment, is amazing, and you can do huge damage in her 4 and rarely get hit. But it's a little too much clunkiness with a couple abilities that just don't really do anything for you. Next is Octavia. This is obvious SS tier. She's just way, way too powerful. She's literally the strongest Warframe in the game, and she has been since she came out. It's just ridiculous. I don't really know what else to talk about with her. I mean, she just does huge damage. If they were to change how much damage enemies do, which I think needs to happen so that health tanking is a viable option in level cap content, that would be a humongous passive nerf to Octavia. I still think she would be one of the strongest frames in the game, but if they change enemy damage scaling, then she'd probably be an S tier. That would, like, they don't even have to nerf her directly to make her not as broken. Next is Zephyr. Zephyr is an A tier. Another frame similar to Frost that has an argument that if she was just a little better, she could go into S tier. But the tornadoes that she makes, while they're really powerful, they're expensive, they don't have a big AoE, they don't have a big duration, or long duration I mean, and you're always having to recast them because when they move around on their own, they're dumb, and then otherwise you have to just put them in place, and then you just have this little zone of tornadoes. It's still really good, but all of that's a bit of an issue. She does have her airburst rounds, which is a great augment for her second ability, so she can suck stuff in, which is nice, ragdoll it, and get a huge damage buff. She's got her little, I can't remember what it's called, but the ability that reflects all projectiles, giving her incredible survivability. He has a great passive for a ton of crit while you're in the air, and you jump a lot in Warframe. And Tailwind is interesting, it has some gimmicky stuff, but I think that might need to be changed a bit. Overall, pretty strong frame though. Trinity. Trinity is both amazing and terrible at once. I'm going to put her in... You know, I almost want to say F tier should just be changed to rework, because it doesn't necessarily mean the frame is horrendous, I guess, right? Rework is... Ooh, I think Trinity is in for a rework. I mean, they already said Trinity and Nyx are getting light reworks. The problem is Trinity's good, but also terrible. Her passive is okay. Her 4 is nice for yourself and teammates. It's a great survivability tool, but her first ability is worthless. Her second ability, Energy Vampires, just spam for energy. There's nothing special about it other than that it can drain enemies' HP, which is funny with Marked for Death. That's actually a very good build and can destroy even level cap enemies. But despite that, it still is a bit clunky. And her third ability, the Link, is horrible. Worthless, right? She has 2 completely worthless abilities. And one ability that just has a bit of a gimmick. And then a 4 ability that's just a base heal. And most of her augments are terrible. So Trinity is really good. I would put her in B or A tier, but for now I think she's got to go in the rework tier, which she will be getting a light rework. So in due time, we'll see her rise. Depending on how good the rework is, I see Trinity as having the potential to even be an SS tier, like needing a nerf. But we'll have to see how it goes. Next is Wukong. After playing Wukong more, I have to admit I did do Wukong a little dirty. I still don't think he's that insane, but he's definitely better than I gave him credit for. I would put him in B tier. He's okay, he doesn't do a whole lot. His passive is meh. His first ability, the little clone guy, I feel like is still, at any sort of high level content, it's pretty worthless most of the time. His Smoke Cloud, though, was really nice for getting around. Has great survivability. His 4, his Exalted, is horrible. It needs reworked, but most Exalted weapons do. And his third ability, Defy, is actually nice. I like Defy a lot. And it's his Helmet ability. It's not horrible. It gives you immunity and lets you do a big hit of damage to all the enemies around, which at level cap, when you take so much damage, actually ends up being able to one-shot a lot of stuff. So he's not horrible, but he's not amazing. Revenant, SS tier, another frame that needs nerfed. I think there's only going to be 3 frames in SS tier, and I think these 2 were obvious, and the last one is also, you all already know who it's going to be. You'll know. But Revenant having complete damage and status immunity with Mesmer Skin and having an augment to give it to teammates should not be in the game. It just shouldn't. It completely nullifies tank frames in general, because he will always be the better tank frame. His 4 is mediocre, but usually people just replace that with Roar so they get a huge damage buff. And his 1 has good crowd control. Reeve drains enemy base or enemy HP, which is pretty crazy. I'm pretty sure it goes through armor as well. You can get it to do some chunky damage. He's just way, way too strong. I don't think they need to like nerf him into the ground. I'd say change Mesmer Skin to not give status immunity anymore. And dang, even that though, just complete damage immunity would still make it pretty busted. I'm on the spot. I can't really think of the best way to nerf him and keep him balanced, but I know there is a way, and there's a bunch of developers at DE that could probably figure it out. Inaros, who just got his rework a couple months ago in Dante Unbound, I'd put him in a comfortable B tier. I don't know. That's a tough one. C tier is even debatable, because he's both good and horrible. The problem is HP does not work well anywhere past like level 500 even. I have a pretty hardcore HP armor tank on my Inaros with like 7 or 8,000 HP, and when I do a what is it, Elite Deep Archimedes, I'm getting pulverized. Like, holy crap, he just gets melted. You cannot health tank in any sort of endgame content. It's just a big problem. His first ability is nice. The cats he can spawn is nice. I wish the Scarab Swarm spread faster. It still doesn't give you a lot of armor and takes way too long to cast his little, like, Scarab Armor ability. I think that's a problem. The augment for his 4 that they reworked, I think that is kind of worthless and that needs a bit of a rework. And his passive, where you just whack stuff to come back to life, is really finicky. Like, all the time I'll be hitting enemies and it just doesn't build up. It's a big issue. So I would put Inaros in C tier. His really best part is the tornado that lets you pull stuff in and can do big damage with the augment. But other than that, he's really not that good. Wisp. Wisp is a comfortable A tier. She's got good buffs, but she's not as insane as some people seem to think she is. She is really good though. She has like invis with her passive, her little clone she can send out and teleport to gives her iframes, and she can aggro stuff with it. She's got big buffs from her motes, which can give to yourself and all of the teammates. She has crap, what was her other ability? I totally forgot somehow. Oh yeah, Breach Surge, which is ridiculously powerful. Breach Surge is one of the best abilities in the game. Soulgate is kind of horrible. It really needs a buff or some sort of change. But overall, she's a very nice, strong frame. That's great for support. Chroma. Chroma's a tough one. He is very dependent on what weapons you're running. Chroma's damage buff from Vex Armor and Toxic Ward, its pseudo-vigorous swap damage buff, are both additive with weapons that are additive with Gun CO. But if the weapon has multiplicative Gun CO, then Chroma's damage buffs become multiplicative. That is very important. So, if you're using additive weapons, he's okay. If you're using a multiplicative weapon, he can become just absurd how strong he is. He can actually energy or health tank pretty high up, even though health tanking isn't viable. He can go a lot farther with it than Inaros can. So I want to say B tier, just because his first ability is still worthless and his 4th ability needs help. He could use a bit of a rework, but I don't think he needs as much of a rework to his overall abilities as like Trinity. I think his 4, they could leave it how it is, but have it more like a proper companion that follows you around and just primes everything. It only needs a slight change to like do something like that, and his 4th could actually become really, really good. And I don't know what they would do with his first ability. Maybe just have him leap up and shoot a big shot of breath down that does like big damage and spreads a bunch of statuses. That could be cool. But I don't think he needs too much help, just a little bit, and he could be much stronger. I think he could go from, I'm going to put him in B tier for now, but if they were to do those slight changes to his first and his 4th, maybe his passive, I think he could easily go up to S tier. Next, we have Caliban, who is about to get his rework in what, I'm not sure if it's the next update. No, I don't think it's the next update. I think it's the update after the next update. So it's actually going to be a couple months out. But we are going off of Caliban right now. A lot of people are going to disagree with this, but I think Caliban is A tier, at least. He's very, very good. He has armor strip that's really good and consistent, and I love using the ability. It's just so satisfying. It's a zone that stays there. There's no cap on the zone, so he has one of the best armor strip abilities in my opinion. And he doesn't tend to have too much energy issues, so you can really spam it if you have the right build. He has a ton of aggro everywhere with his sentience, and with how they regenerate shields, and you just put on brief respite. He has incredible shield gating potential. His first ability is horrible. It shouldn't exist. But you can helmet over that. That's not like a good fix, but it is something that you can do in the game. His second ability, if it didn't ragdoll stuff, would be really good, but depending on what you do in the area you're in, and if you have like an explosive weapon, his second ability can actually be really strong. His passive is nice for yourself and teammates if you're not doing level cap. He's got so much going for him. I made an hour-long Caliban video a couple months ago explaining how great he is. So if you want to know more, like in depth, why I think he's so good right now, then go do that. But I do still think that the rework will be nice to really buff him up so that he's got more usability with all of his abilities, as well as easier to understand and how to use him. Next we have Ember. Ember is... she just got her heirloom skin, and she got a lot of different buffs and changes. I'm torn between A tier and S tier, because with high-end investment, like I showed in the Ember video, she can have a lot of potential with huge armor stripping everywhere, incredible survivability, big PP damage, lots of crowd control. She's got it all. She just has everything. But her biggest problem is that she's heavily reliant on investment. If you don't invest a ton of effort into her, like resources, building her, putting all the form on her, all the Archon shards, your companion, your weapons, building everything into her, then she's not going to get that much value. So that's why I think I'll leave her in A tier. But if you're like hard investing into her, she can become like an S tier level frame. Next we have Saryn, and this is the final, I believe, SS tier frame. Most people know why. She does too much damage. She can make an unmodded Stug kill level cap stuff. She's just, why? Why is this frame in the game? She's too good. She is an incredibly overpowered weapons platform that gives absurd amounts of damage to your weapon. She's got crazy combinations, like her with the Sobek and Acid Shells is just ridiculously good. She is way, way stronger than she needs to be. She's got decent survivability if you go for a Shield Gate Molt build, which is really easy to do and doesn't take much effort. She is really fun to play, but I think she just needs toned down a bit. Not a lot, because I don't want her to be terrible, but I think they just need to tone her damage down. Like, I think overall, if they made it so faction multipliers no longer double dipped in general, and then they wouldn't triple dip on her Toxic Lash DOTs anymore, I think that would just passively nerf her. It wouldn't be a direct nerf. It would bring more balance to the game, and it would bring her down to S tier. But she's been broken for so long at this point, I don't think they'll ever do anything. I think they'll probably just leave Revenant, Saryn, and Octavia as they are forever, but one can hope. Valkyr. Valkyr is actually really, really good. I'm also going to put her in A tier. I know a lot of frames in A tier. Her paralysis is pretty terrible. Her first ability, Ripline, is better than people give it credit for. It can be janky at times, but I actually really like it as a movement tool. It helps to get around a lot, and it's super cheap. She gives an ungodly amount of attack speed to your melee weapons from Warcry. And her claws, you're literally invincible. You're just straight up invincible with an absurd amount of damage on her claws. I did a max investment Valkyr video 2 weeks ago, I think, and I showed how crazy the damage is on her. It's ridiculous. Having that high of damage with complete invincibility and people say she's bad, I think if paralysis wasn't as bad and she didn't require as high of investment, she might be able to go up to S tier, but for now I'd say A tier is a fair assessment. Yareli's all... I'm putting a lot in A tier, I know, but that, if anything, I feel like that shows that the balance isn't as bad in this game as some people think it is. Yareli's actually pretty good. Her first ability, her bubbles, are really good for getting bonus damage and crowd controlling. She has her passive, which is just 200% crit chance to secondaries, which is actually really, really good if you use a secondary weapon, or at least one that benefits from crits. She has her second ability, Murielina, that's not great on its own, but with the augment, you have on-command rolling guards, just literally infinite iframes whenever you want, giving her incredible survivability. Her Aqua Blades are okay, and her 4 needs help. It shouldn't ragdoll stuff and maybe have more range. But she's overall pretty decent. Nothing amazing, but she's got just the augment for Murielina just really skyrockets her value. I think that should have been part of her in general. Like, it shouldn't be an augment to have Murielina follow you instead of riding it. It should be hold it, the ability for her to follow you, and cast it for her to ride it, or something like that. I don't know. But she's pretty decent. Next we have Grendel. Big Daddy Grendel. He has ups and downs. He's both really fun and has a lot of potential for power, but he relies a lot. I say rely a lot, but there's a lot of stuff that frames rely on. He needs to be able to eat stuff, which on the low end is a problem because if he eats something, it just dies too fast. And on the high end, when there's too many enemies with Xmas everywhere, he can't eat them. So that becomes a really big issue. His ball can be weird at times when he's rolling around in his bowling ball weird ass mode. It's so fun, so freaking fun. But it can be really janky. One of his best abilities is Nourish, which can just be put on any frame. He's good, and he can spread like corrosive and do good damage, and he has good survivability, but he could use a bit of help, I think. Just a few buffs. That's why I'd say B tier is a fair assessment. Next is Dante. Dante's still good, but he's had a lot of problems added to him because of Jade Shadows in the passive nerf to slash by increasing enemy health and lowering enemy armor, which was a pretty big nerf to him. His Grimoire, his exalted weapon, I don't think it's that good, and it feels pretty horrible to use. He needs a lot of ability casts, nuke stuff. He does have an ungodly amount of overguard, so his support is incredible. I'm thinking top of B tier or bottom of A tier. He gives so much to the team. I think bottom of A tier is fair because he gives like so much overguard. Your team becomes nigh invincible, and all of the little birds for more statuses and stuff. And he can nuke rooms still. He's just not as good as he was. Before he would have been S tier, but now I'd say it's safe to say bottom of A tier because of how hard the changes hit him. Nidus is a C tier. Nidus is not good. He has potential to be, and you can make him be good, but he's not that good. His fourth ability is just small radius, and it doesn't last super long, or at least I feel like it should last longer. It costs stacks to use. It needs its augments to really be useful. It's not that great. It's usually what people get rid of. His third ability is annoying because you have to be really close to an enemy or an ally for it to actually work, but it's actually like his strongest ability. Building up stacks takes way too long. He is a pure health frame, so he can't shield gate, meaning he's basically dead no matter what, like Knight or Inaros, unless you're an absolute sweat lord. He really needs some help. Not quite full rework level, but he could still use some help. Hang on, I need to get a drink. I'm dying here. Oh, we still got quite a few frames to go through. Next is Hydroid. Hydroid is worse than he was. I think I put him in S tier last time, but all of the changes made it so that his full armor strip, isn't nearly as valuable as it once was. And the fact that everything's going to be fully armor stripped now anyways, whereas it already was before. But enemy health is like triple what it was on the high end now. That was a pretty big nerf to Hydroid. I still think he's really strong. So many in A tier. But again, A tier is just like a decently balanced frame, which is good. Okay, the more frames in A tier, A tier is what every frame should aim to be in. And I think Hydroid fits that. He's not crazy strong anymore, but he's not bad by any means. He's just a really good frame. Next is Equinox. Equinox actually benefited a lot from the changes with the Jade Shadows. The fact that you don't need armor strip nearly as much as before for her nuke to kill. You don't even have to put an armor strip on Equinox anymore to nuke stuff. Before, without a full armor strip, her nuke was worthless. Now slap on corrosive projection, you're done. There you go. I think Equinox is so unbelievably underrated after the Jade Shadows changes with all of the armor. And the health changes do nothing because the more health they have, the more damage you do, which gives you more damage for your nuke. So it doesn't even matter. She still does the same damage with that, except more because the armor changes. Equinox goes in S tier. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are like, you're crazy. She's like C tier, but Equinox is so good. Her 4 can, in the nuke mode, right, night mode, it is one of the most powerful nukes in the game after the Jade Shadows nerfs. And in day mode, if you build for shield gating, she has one of the best support shield gating survivability tools in the entire game. As long as you get like 1 kill by the time your shield gate runs out, you're invincible. And that applies to teammates in your radius too. She's really, really strong. Her first ability lets her switch between the two. Granted, you'll want the augment to not lose the build up on your 4. Her third ability is a very nice strength increase to you and your teammates. With the augment, it's a pseudo gloom without having to use your helmet ability to put gloom on. Her 2 isn't worthless. You can build into it and make it spread everywhere for more damage, but I don't think it's worth it, though you can just replace that with a helmet. I think Equinox is just so strong. I think I should do an updated Equinox. I should do a max investment Equinox video soon. I don't know why I didn't think of her to do a max investment on. She's just so good now, and she's really fun to play. I love Equinox. Next is Mesa, and a lot of people were upset that I did her so dirty. The problem is I was assuming level cap, but most people don't do level cap stuff. So I think I should be fair and take into account how they do generally and also how they perform in the end game. Which is why I would put Mesa in S tier or A tier instead of B tier. She does. If you are a low end player, like let's say you never go higher than base steel path, if you even do that, okay? She's just SS tier. She's ridiculously powerful. But once you start doing more difficult content, I'd say she's A tier. She really starts to struggle with damage on her regulators if you don't heavily invest into them. Her 1 is worthless without the augments. Her muzzle flash is worthless without the augments. And her shatter shield is just okay. And it doesn't really scale well because it's damage reduction, so it doesn't scale well for endgame content. Next is Voruna. Voruna is really, really good, and I'd say, I'm going to put her in S tier, but a big reason she's in S tier is because she's a melee-based frame, and melee weapons are broken, right? Like, that's one of the main reasons she's in S tier. If it weren't for melees being so powerful, she would be A tier. So, Varuna's S tier because she gives tons of health orbs and energy orbs. She applies an ungodly amount of status effects everywhere, and you can spread all of those so easily with a melee influence melee weapon. She has invis and movement speed that you can just recast to get around all the time. Her 4 isn't that great, but then you just helmet over it. She has really good passives like a bunch of parkour velocity or a second life or complete status immunity. She's really, really good. And a frame that gives her a run for money, we're just going to go skip down to him right now, would be Kullervo. Kullervo is also ungodly in his power. He is also an S tier. If it wasn't for Kullervo having no shields, I know he has Overguard, but if Kullervo had shields and his 4 was just a tad bit better, he would be SS tier. But because he relies too heavily on spamming his 3 and being near enemies to get the Overguard, I'd say he goes S tier, and his 4 without the augment isn't that great. But he's so strong. His passive is just a ton of efficiency, or a heavy attack efficiency. His ability that links damage to all enemies makes all your melee weapons have an ungodly radius. Like, he can just nuke everything so easily. He has free flat crits from his first ability, which is better than the helmet's version. It gives 150% flat crit to your melee at base, and it scales with strength. He just has so much going for him. And then Overguard from his 3. Nova. Nova is rough. She's not as good as she once was. Hang on, I need a drink again. Nova struggles because her antimatter drop is worthless if you don't go for a heavy investment meme build. Her 4 is very situational. Sometimes you want Speedva, sometimes you want Slova, and sometimes it changes in what missions you're doing, so you'd always have to change your builds. Her portal isn't nearly as good as new frames that are better for speedrunning stuff, though it is still fun. She is very energy hungry. All of her abilities take different stats to build all the way, so it's really hard to build for all of her abilities. Like, most of the time, at best, you're going to build for 2 of her 4 abilities in her base kit, which is rough. There's not really much synergy with her abilities. I would put Nova in C tier. Her augment for her first ability can make her nuke stuff, but she's just so clunky. Where she does excel really well with her 4, right? If we were only talking about her 4, she could have an argument for S tier. But when you take into account all of the other stuff, she's just not that great. Next is Mag. Mag is very, very good, and I would put her into S tier because she has, with her augment, she can get an easy, massive radius, full armor strip that movement locks enemies so they can't move around, and refunds shields and builds over shields for yourself and teammates. Her 3 disarms enemies with an augment, or it just disrupts electronics at base while refreshing all of your own shields and your teammates' shields and stripping armor and creating polarized shards. Her 2 makes you do massive damage to enemies in the bubble. You can also go for like a blender build with that and Garuda's helmet ability. Her first ability is one of the best grouping abilities in the game, even though it's only a cone in front of you. It has a humongous 25-meter base radius. 25 meters! That's the biggest grouping ability in the game. It's so strong. Nobody talks about it. I don't understand. It's just so freaking good. Her passive is literally just a free fetch, so that if you have a build centered around her, you get to save a mod on your pet, I guess. It could be better, but it's not terrible. Magnetic damage just got buffed, or at least the statuses and stuff with Jade Shadows. She's just a really, really strong frame that works in pretty much any content in the game. Next, we have Atlas. Atlas goes in B tier. He has a lot of potential. As far as just straight up damage, this bow is like a triple S tier in damage. And I'm going to be releasing a max investment Atlas video here pretty soon, probably in the next week. He can do so much damage. The problem is his passive is almost worthless because it's only knockdown immunity if you never jump, but it's Warframe. You're always jumping. So his passive is almost worthless. His first ability is great, but exalted weapons are wonky to try to build around, but that's the only thing really worth building around. His 4 is doo-doo. His 3 is really just there so that you can build up your rubble. Other than that, it's not really useful. His 2 is horrible, one of the worst abilities in the game. It just shouldn't exist. He's literally just a one-punch guy. That's what he's for. He's really good when you build for that. He's almost invincible. He has an ungodly amount of damage, big AoE damage. He's super, super fun. But he takes a lot of effort to make him get to be that good while still having several abilities that are worthless to him. Next, we have Khora. Khora is A tier. Another frame that you could say S tier, but hitting enemies around when they're in the Strangledome can be a pain in the ass. It's hard to build range, strength, duration, and efficiency on her because she kind of wants it all, so it can be annoying to build her. Venari is just okay, I guess. You do get him for free when you helmet over it because you don't need the helmet for Venari to still be there, but it is what it is. Her first ability can do a ton of damage, right, going for the pseudo-exalted build, but again, that's a bit clunky to build pseudo-exalteds. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of investment, but it can do good damage. Her survivability is quite lacking for the most part because the best way to go for survivability is shield gating and spamming her 1, but then if you run out of energy, you're literally dead. Ensnare is really nice though, but you can just helmet that onto a better frame. I know I just said a lot of bad stuff about her, but there's a lot of good stuff, like the fact that you can make her first ability do huge damage, and that her 4 is great crowd control to keep stuff off objectives. She has an ability to make it give more loot when you kill enemies, and Snare, again, is still a great ability. And because Venari is pointless as an ability because it stays there even if you get rid of it, she has a free helmet. There's no reason to not put a helmet on her. So you can just put a helmet on her and lose nothing. Very nice. So she's an A tier. Rhino. Rhino is... I'm going to put him in A tier. I did him a little dirty putting him in C tier last time. After using him more, I think the radius he has on his stomp or the augment on his roar to be able to crowd control stuff is huge. He has the biggest AoE crowd control in the game. It is ridiculous how much range it has. He can get overguard whenever he wants. which also has iframes when you first cast it, and the overguard scales in the end game. Not that it really works that well if you're getting hit too often, but because the iframes are on the overguard, that saves it. He has a roar that's not the nerfed helmet version, so he gets huge damage, which double dips on DOTs and stuff. His first ability is worthless, though I suppose you can helmet over that, and his passive is worthless. But other than that, he's got big damage, great survivability, incredible crowd control. I mean, that should be enough. I'd still say bottom of A tier, almost top, well, maybe top of B tier if it wasn't for Roar double dipping, okay? If Roar didn't double dip, like if ever that gets changed, he'd be B tier unless they buff him. But for now, bottom of A tier. Next is Mirage, S tier. Immediate S tier. She has incredible survivability if you know how to build her right. All the changes in Jade Shadows buffed her to hell and back. She has the new option of Jade's helmet ability, which fits perfectly into her playstyle. She gives an ungodly amount of damage. She doesn't have to stay in the light like she used to before Dante and Bound. She's just been receiving wins left and right. Blast is insane now, and with her clones, you can apply so many blast procs everywhere, just all the time. She's ridiculously powerful. Next is Nyx. Nyx goes in the rework. I mean, she's going to get a rework, but right now, she just is a crowd control frame that has a bunch of... There are other frames that do the job better. So she really could use a rework. She's not terrible. I'd even dare say bottom of B tier. Well, actually probably C tier. But she has great survivability, okay? I gave her probably a little too much credit in my Nyx video I did a while ago. But she is really strong, but also not, again, just because other frames do what she does better. If there weren't other frames that had better survivability and crowd control, she would be a really good frame. But there's just better options. So for now, she goes in the rework section, which they said they're doing a light rework for both Trinity and Nyx. So I think she'll be a lot better in the future. Nekros is... wait. Hang on. There we go. Nekros is C tier for sure. He's not great. His floor is kind of wonky, and they die and they run out real fast. I mean, you can build into it for a funny meme build like A's Invasions did, but it's not practical. His Desecrate's decent if with Equilibrium for like infinite energy generator for yourself and your team, but he himself doesn't really need the energy. Terrify is nice to have on him. Soul Punch is kind of doo-doo. His passive is terrible. He's just not that great other than farming for extra loot. Vauban is a solid S tier. I know people are going to disagree with that, but he has a huge suck. He's got the armor strip that doesn't even need to be a full armor strip anymore because of the Jade Shadows changes. He's got huge damage on his Photon Strike, like literal Orbiter Strike. His Orbital Strike plus his Flatjet Orbs damage scale with enemy level, meaning they just scale all the way up, doing an ungodly amount of damage. He's got the Flatjet Orbs again, which are basically mini turrets that can destroy stuff. He has his first ability, the Tesla Nervos, which with the augment is just a mini marked for death that can do some massive PP damage. He's got great survivability via shield gating builds. He's very easy to go for a shield gate build on. He doesn't have too many energy problems. He's got it all, right? Survivability, damage, grouping, armor strip, crowd control. He literally has everything. It's crazy to me that there's people that think Vauban is a bad Warframe. Like, that's just so wild to me that there's anybody that would say he's a bad frame. I've played him quite a bit, and he's just so strong. Citrine, she's a comfortable A tier as well, a really good support frame. She's a lot better after she got the augment to spread her crystals everywhere. The problem is they aren't always on the head, so you don't get the headshot multiplier all the time. But it is still really good. She can apply the base 4 elements to everything you and your teammates shoot. She can give healing and damage reduction, which isn't great on the high end, but on the low end is really nice for yourself and your teammates. She can use her Fractured Blast to make health orbs and energy orbs off enemies for yourself and teammates and stuff. She's just a really nice support frame. Gara is a big oof in C tier. She's just been not doing great lately. Her Shattered Lash builds are better exalted weapons in the game. Her 2 is way too annoying to keep up. The damage reduction isn't that valuable. If you fall off the map or die or something, you lose all your built up glass. Her 4 gets destroyed easily, so it's not good for like defending stuff. It has a long cast animation. She has energy problems. Her 3 doesn't have a big radius. It needs the augment to really be viable so that it can generate energy. Agara she's got a lot of problems. I don't think she needs a complete rework. All of her abilities are fine in concept, right? In theory. All of her abilities just need buffed. She doesn't need reworked or changed. She just needs a stat bump to like a few of the different stats on everything, and she'd be great. It's just that right now her stats do not work well in the current sandbox. Next we have Gyre, which is an easy S tier. Holy shit, Gyre is just so powerful. I did a max investment Gyre video like a week ago or a few days ago or something, showing off that she's just been getting even more wins with the Jade Shadows changes and stuff. She does so much damage. She has such good survivability, crowd control galore because everything is electrified. She's a pseudo weapons platform because the crazy crit chance she gives. She has no energy problems literally at all because she's just generating energy for herself constantly. She has grouping because of her second ability, pulling stuff in. Pillage is like the best helmet ever to put on her over her 1, right? So then she has the armor strip as well. She's got it all. She's so strong. Her biggest problem is when there's no enemies to kill. Like if there's nothing to kill, you're not going to be able to keep your abilities up. So you need stuff to kill. She literally suffers from success because she's too good and everything dies too fast. But other than that, she's so freaking good. Ivara is a... Ooh. There's going to be people that don't like this, but I'm going to put Ivara in C tier. Her first ability, her arrows, the sleep arrow is worse than most other crowd controls in the game. It's kind of due to water. The cloak arrow is niche at best. The noise arrow is worthless. The dash wire arrow is just a gimmick solely for camping when you have the augment for crits. Other than that, there's no point in using it. Her weird navigator ability is super niche for some weird funny builds, but it's not very practical. Her third ability, her invis, is nice because it's infinite and you get a headshot multiplier, but you can't freaking bullet jump or anything. Like it takes away more than half like of the movement abilities in Warframe. She's basically just meant to camp. Her exalted weapon is so outdated and horrible. It needs a massive buff so badly. And I don't know. She needs help. She really needs a lot of help. You know what? I dare say that she would even need to go into the rework category. I know there's going to be people that strongly disagree with that, but I don't know. I feel like she's very outdated. We'll leave her at the bottom of C tier for now, but there could be the argument to put her into the rework category. I should clarify though, I was an Ivara main for like 6 months a couple years ago, and I played her a lot. I love Ivara. I love how she looks. She's interesting, but she's just not effective. Next we have Oberon. Oberon is actually super underrated. Dang, I keep grabbing other frames by accident. Son of a son. I would put Oberon in like near the top of B tier. He's actually pretty good with his augment for his 4. He's really good. If it didn't require you to be on hollowed ground, it would be unbelievably powerful. His hollowed ground is actually really good. You can just put it everywhere, so you have status immunity. Your teammates have status immunity. It has radiation applying to the enemies all the time. That with the augment on his 4 gives you an easy full armor strip as long as you have some level of strength. And then you can have quadratic scaling damage when you group enemies and all of the little zones from the augment overlap to do big PP damage. He's got his passive is okay for your companion. It's not amazing, but it's not horrible. He has his Smite Infusion augment, which makes it so you can get a huge radiation damage buff, which is decent-ish for making him a weapons platform. And what was his last ability? Oh yeah, the healing ability. That's pretty decent with Phoenix Renewal, so that you and your teammates get extra lives. That's actually pretty good. Not a bad augment at all. Plus it makes it so that when teammates die, they get like a full minute before they bleed out. making that incredibly nice to have in Elite Deep Archimedia, so that people don't just bleed out in 5 seconds. Very, very decent, good, strong frame that needs a bit of buffs, but isn't as bad as people make him out to be a lot of the time. Zaku is, I put him in S tier last time. I'm going to say A tier. He's good. He has big armor strip zones. I would say he's pretty close to Caliban, but he's got armor strip zones similar to Caliban. He can steal guns and that scale off enemy level, right, to do big PP damage to stuff. The problem is that that's like the main way to play him, and he can get kind of boring just running around. But he is quite strong with stupidly high evasion chance while his 4 is active, and it also means his energy economy is amazing because his 4 makes his energy economy amazing because it pauses all of his abilities with the exclusion of helmet abilities. He needs a few tweaks here and there because I think some of his abilities on his rotating ability are kind of worthless, but he's pretty good. We're almost done. We're getting down there. Goss, S tier. Most people know why. I mean, survivability via like the best shield gating in the game. He's got thermal sunder, which is amazing. You can easily armor strip and do damage and freeze enemies in blast procs and stuff. He's fast as hell. He has a huge speed and fire rate and reload speed buff and everything on his 4. He has complete damage immunity as long as you have high enough strength to most of the elements that take damage, right? Like, what is it? Physical, any of the physical stuff, and then cold, blast, and heat, I think. He has damage immunity levels from his 2, which also gives him status immunity. He's got a lot going for him. He's so strong. There's a reason he's so popular. Next is Corvex. Corvex is B tier. I don't think he's that bad. He does give status immunity via charges to yourself and teammates. He has an augment. That's a bandit augment that lets him armor strip, but it's for his weird walls. But it's not the worst armor strip in the game. His 4 actually does huge damage if you hit chonky enemies, because I think it scales with their level. You can actually nuke stuff, and because armor strip isn't as important, you could forego armor strip, just go corrosive projection, and then apply viral and stuff and put some shards on, and you can actually nuke with his 4. It's just a better version of Wisp's Soulgate. His passive is actually really nice at times. +3 punch through on every weapon you use can be really nice for hitting big groups of enemies. His first ability, the Chirinka Pillars, are actually really nice. I love Chirinka Pillar. It has great crowd control, and it can be built to do some level of damage, and it just lasts so long, so you can forego building duration on him. He's pretty good. He just needs a few buffs overall. I don't know, like a little bit of something to Chirinka Pillar, get something more than just status immunity from his, I think it's his 3. Maybe have him get like a bit of a damage buff or something, or like guaranteed rad procs on all of your shots from your weapons, something like that, and he would become much better. Next is Protea, who is also S tier for sure, because I mean her first ability has insane levels of shield gating for yourself and teammates. It can destroy enemies with the slash grenades. Her 2 has massive damage with the turrets with heat procs, which are like one of the best stats procs in the game. She has her 3, which just gives you infinite ammo, health, and energy for yourself and teammates. And then her 4, which is unbelievably underrated. It makes you nigh invincible, even though she already has her shield grenades, and can nuke stuff. And that paired with her augments, you can have a turret following you around during her 4, and then you can also armor strip during her 4. She's so good. Huge damage with very little risk because of how good she is at not dying, while also being such an incredible support for your teammates, because then they never have to worry about energy or ammo or health. Next is Banshee. Banshee is in B tier. She's both good and bad. I put her in A tier last time. Her 4th ability is worthless. Her passive is worthless, but the rest of her is actually really good. Her sonar, especially with the augment, it can actually make you do some huge damage. It just has RNG involved with where it puts the sonar on the enemy. If they could make that less RNG involved and have it always put on their heads or something, that would be really nice. Her first ability has an augment that lets you armor strip, which doesn't take much strength for a full armor strip. And it has huge range. Its only issue is that it ragdolls enemies. If they remove the ragdoll, it'll be an amazing ability. Silence is incredibly good, not just for yourself, but for your teammates. You silence an acolyte with silence so that he doesn't take away your abilities. Xmas can't use their abilities. It stuns enemies. It has the augment to open them up to massive amounts of finisher damage. She has so much going for her, but with a few problems that are big enough to really drag her down. She definitely doesn't need a full rework, but she could use a bit of a buff. Next is Styanax. He goes into comfortable A tier, gives tons of overguard, huge amounts of slash damage, infinite energy. If you put Nourish on him, he can be an infinite energy battery for your entire team all the time. As long as you're getting kills, you get shields back from his 3, I think it is, meaning he's also invincible as long as you continue to get kills. His first ability is meh. You can helmet over it or put the new augment on. That makes it actually a really good grouping tool. And his second ability is a really good armor strip that works on acolytes. Very easy to armor strip. Its only problem as well, similar to Banshee, is that it ragdolls. If it wasn't for that, it would be much better. Overall, a very, very good frame though. And he actually is... Styanax is probably the best frame, or one of the best frames for Deep Archimedia. Like, when I get Styanax, I win. It's over. He fixes survivability entirely, and I can just spam my 4. It doesn't matter what guns I got for damage, just spam my 4. It'll do the damage for me. Next, we have Ash. Ash is... A tier. He would have been S tier before, but the slash nerfs from the health changes just hit him so hard. So freaking hard. He's still really strong though, don't get me wrong. But not nearly as strong as he was before. You can still do some crazy builds like Silence plus his 4, Marked for Death plus his finishers with his teleport, just using Roar on him with a slash based weapon. He can do really good damage. Infinite invisibility, big amounts of crit. You can make your teammates invisible if you cast your invis when you're close to them. He's got a lot going for him. It's just that he got his damage and everything slightly taken down with the Jade Shadows changes. And it's kind of annoying that when you're invis, your companion, if it's a sentinel, can't attack, which makes it annoying to use certain companions with him. But still a very strong frame. Next we have Loki. And Loki, this is the hill I will die on. Loki is S tier. He is the crowd control god. He has such easy invisibility, augment so that he can get iframes whenever he wants. He can give iframes to teammates. He has his decoy, which has the highest aggro value of anything in the game. He's just the crowd control guy. His augment for his 4 to disarm enemies or radiate enemies. You can disarm enemies, radiate them, aggro them, and you're invis. And you can teleport with iframes. What else do you need? When I'm doing a Void Cascade level cap run, and if I'm not playing Loki and I have a Loki teammate, it makes life so much easier. When I get a Loki, I'm like, thank you. You are the bee's knees. A Loki on the team makes me actually bust a fat one. I love getting Loki teammates. He is just... People say crowd control is dead, but Loki is proof that it's not. Next is Excalibur, who, C tier. He needs some desperate help. Slash dash is pretty worthless, even if you build into it, because it's so clunky and it's an exalted weapon. His 2 is okay for blinding stuff, and it can work for shield gating. I actually like it. His 3 is heavily dependent on the augments to work, and it constantly updates with how many enemies you hit. It's still really strong, huge damage buff, but it does have its issues. And his 4, while it can be pretty strong, especially with Blast being an option now, Blast Corrosive, it does still suffer as an exalted weapon, so it can't put on like melee arcanes and stuff, and its base crit is horrendous. You really need like Kullervo's Helminth to make him work. Though he can be made to work, but he's not that great. He needs some buffs. Not reworks, like abilities completely changed, but he needs some buffs. Hildryn is, I'm going to put Hildryn in the rework tier. She's just, for anyone that doesn't know me well enough, but most of my subscribers will know this already, I am like the number one Hildryn simp on this planet. I love Hildryn with a burning passion. She's my most played frame. I freaking love her. But it's mostly because of how she looks. I love me some good old muscle mommies. But her gameplay is just so rough, and the Jade Shadows changes nerfed her unbelievably hard. Balefire is only good for not speedrunning non-steel pass stuff. It's got horrible base stats. Her 2 pillage, while it's really good that you have pillage on her, which means you can put another helmets on her without having to use their helmets for pillage, because I believe pillage is the best ability in the game. That's like her only one saving grace other than her passive for the 3.5 second shield gate. Having pillage at base and a 3.5 second shield gate for her passive are the only 2 good things about her. Her 3 is mediocre. It drains your shields super fast for every enemy it tags, even though it doesn't even apply radiation, and it drains energy for tagging your teammates. Her 4 is total dog shit. It is so bad, and it drains your energy or your shield so freaking fast. Like, if there's 20 enemies around you, cast your 4 to crowd control them for a second, you're going to go back down 1 second later because all your shields are gone, and then you're going to die. It's so freaking bad. She's literally just a pillage bot. That's it. Just spam pillage. Again, I love Hildryn. She's my favorite Warframe in the game, but she is not good at all. And the Jade Shadows changes really cemented that, because at least with pillage, when you strip an enemy's armor, you strip a percentage of it. Okay, with the enemies going in, like at level cap, enemies have like 100k armor. If I'm high enough to full strip their armor, I hit one enemy and I'm gonna get full shields and overshields back, even if I'm bottomed out. But now that armor caps out at 2700, but you don't need a full strip anymore. Let's say you don't build for full strip since you don't need it anymore, and you have like 200% strip, right? So you strip 50% of their armor or shields. All right. If they are at the armor cap of 2700 and you tag them and only strip 50%, you're only getting 1300 armor for hitting one enemy. Meaning if you're like almost bottomed out, you're going to need to hit 6-7 enemies to get all your shields and overshields back if you're a high shield Hildryn, which most likely you are. And that also means in low-end stuff, you're screwed over even more, where the enemies only have a few hundred armor. If you cast your pillage, you're going to lose armor or shields. Like, normally you cast pillage to get shields back. If you're doing normal star chart stuff, like you're a new player with Hildryn, like you bought her something, you're more than likely going to have less shields after casting pillage than when you cast it. And that completely negates its whole purpose on her. It's a big problem. And now we're on to the final Warframe, Volts. Good old Volts. He is between A and S tier. It's a tough one. I mean, his first ability is terrible on its own, but with Shock Trooper, with how good Electric is, and melee influence being a thing, Shock Trooper actually works really well. His speed boost is incredibly nice for reload speed, melee attack speed, and running around, making him a great melee frame. His shield has no amount of HP, meaning if you pick it up, you have complete damage immunity from the frontal area of your frame, which gives really good survivability. It adds guaranteed electric I think it's guaranteed, but yeah, it adds electric damage onto your attacks. Actually, no, I don't think it's guaranteed electric proc, but it does. It adds electricity damage to your attacks, like 50% electricity. It gives you like double the crit damage. His 4, if you have casting speed and capacitance, is great for crowd control and just a bunch of shield regeneration for shield gain for yourself and teammates. He's just got a lot going for him. Yeah, I'd say S tier. There's still a lot of frames in S tier, and I know there's still going to be people that are mad about that, but I think there's a lot of really strong frames. Again, though, SS tier is the tier of frames that are just like, they need nerfed. They're too strong. S tier is the frames that are really, really good. A tier is the frames that are really good, but balanced. They have some downsides. B tier is they need a bit of help. C tier is, dear God, why? When will they get buffed? And rework is they could really use some rework because they're either so bad they shouldn't exist, or half of their abilities are worthless. And then I don't know, because I still haven't played these frames. If I had to guess, though, I'd say Garuda's probably A tier, Baruch A tier, Lavos S tier, Sevagoth and Dagoth are probably A tier. Maybe Sevagoth B tier, I guess. I don't know. Maybe it'll get changed with his Prime version coming out. But that's going to do it for the tier list for now. The Jade Shadows, like, we're a month or longer, month and a half, 5. I think we're 5 weeks into the Jade Shadows update. And here is the tier list. If you liked it, then leave a like, subscribe, share it to somebody. If you hated it, leave a hateful comment so I can laugh at you, because, you know, it's funny. That's going to be it for the video. If you liked, leave a like, subscribe. Adios.